Hello everyone, welcome to Homemaking Radio. I hope you get a few things done while you listen today. One of the reasons I began doing this is because I observed how much better I did when I was listening to something as I worked, especially when I had difficulty getting focused. So one of the things that I like to do before I let you go is show you my teacup. And it is an antique that I bought at a thrift store. I think it was only a couple of dollars, maybe $1.99, but it's by Paragon, and I think it goes with the room. Now, I am sitting in the room that I showed you last time. It was all fluffy and white, but I'm expecting one of my descendants, to come and stay in it, and I thought he would like something bright. So it's very easy for me to change over a room just by moving a blanket from underneath and putting it on the top of the bed and adding the accessories. So I just wanted to share that with you. And also what I'm wearing today is a jacket someone gave me, and I just now have been able to fit in it. And there was a skirt that we had saved, my daughter and I, we saved everything. I will not be wearing this to do housework, so don't panic, but it was in the closet. It's not good to just let things hang there, so I want to get back far enough that you can see the length of this skirt. It's some kind of chiffon, and we thought we would keep some of these things because we never knew if we would be invited to something formal, but then later on discovered that, for myself, I'm speaking for myself, and maybe for my children too, that some of the formal things that we would be invited to were just too worldly for us. We don't like to be around alcohol. I don't even like the smell of it. And we don't like to be around too much noise, loud music. So a lot of these things have sat in the closet, and I thought, well, maybe we will wear them to one of our formal dinners when I take my family on the train trip, which I am doing. And my house is going to be the train, and the rooms are going to be cabins. And so I'll talk to you more about that later. And one of the things I like to do before I leave you to go and do your work is share my teacup. And I found one that so delightfully goes with this room, and it's by Paragon. I think I got it at a thrift store for just a couple of dollars, and it's one of those ones with the tiny handle. And thankfully one of my readers told me that these were created so that you could grip them like this and touch your thumb to your fingers, and it would stabilize it. It's a lot better than sticking your finger through it, that's for sure. Now, I did explain this to a group of ladies once, but they weren't having it. They thought, we're so used to mugs, they want to put their fist inside of a mug, and so they only want the teacups that have the huge handles. But I'm so happy I learned about this, because this also keeps the cup from tipping, and I do drink out of them. Now today, if you have something you need to go do, I would like to invite you to just listen as you go, because this is like old-fashioned radio that we used to listen to while we were washing dishes, and we would turn the radio on and it would carry us through several jobs. Or we also sang. We had the church hymn books, and we would sit them in front of where we were washing dishes, just behind the faucet, just open them up and set them on the windowsill. There was always a window that overlooked a vegetable garden in the olden days, and learn all the verses of these songs while we were busy washing the dishes. Now, we have what is everyone's talking about, kind of a, I guess, political crisis going on in many countries, including my own, and particularly my state, which is severely commercially locked down. I'm not locked down in my home. I can do whatever I want in my home, and it's all a state of mind. Actually, it's a state of fear, and so I would like to show you that there's no sign of it in my house, and you can make it that way for your house too. That the world might be going through a crisis, but you wouldn't know it in your home. And in a couple of weeks, we have been invited. Some of the ladies of the church have been invited to someone else's home, where she's going to be putting on a lunch for us and a tea, and providing a beautiful Bible lesson. And we are all going to go up there and not even mention any of this, because for us, life thrives. So as a matter of fact, I've started Thrive Academy, which will become Thrive University for my grandchildren, where they get on Zoom with me and I take them through several learning courses, and we just enjoy it so much. But we have to come away feeling better than when we first came, and so that's the way I want to leave you. When you leave here, I want you to feel on top of everything. So you won't want to have you don't want to sit around waiting for the world to straighten up, because when they get finished with this, they're going to find something worse. I told you this on one of my very first videos this year, or maybe last year. When they get finished scaring you to death over one thing, they will start something else. And I wanted to warn you about that, because you think, oh, things couldn't get much worse. Look, they can, but it's all from the media. If you were walking around somewhere, you wouldn't know something was going on if it were not for the masks people are wearing and the things that they're listening to. You wouldn't really know that something was going on. And so what we want to do is create a home life that's free from all of that. And one of our biggest enemies is the media. Both right and left have to keep it going, don't they? And so when we are home, we try to steer the conversation to something that is thrivey, something that will help you thrive. And so I'm challenging everyone to come out of the other side of this. Now, those of you who are watching from a state that's completely open and there's no restrictions, you don't have to worry about this. But I'm challenging everybody that's under any kind of duress to come out of the other side of it stronger, better in some ways, smarter, have more skills and abilities, maybe even thinner, and younger if you can. Find ways to do things. And I have also found out that ladies at home are more busy than they ever were. Before this, it was more a leisurely life, but now, because goods and services are not available to us, we're doing a lot of things ourselves, and doing everything from making our own hair products. I also have a Zoom class on Saturday with a couple of with two families that homeschooled their children, and they're now growing up, and I challenged them to make their own hair products. And I actually made a bottle of hairspray myself from kitchen ingredients, and you can go online and look up the recipes for these things. And so when they come back on the next Saturday, they've got things to show, like a book. They have to have a book that they talk about and why they like the book, and read something out of it. And they also have to come dressed up and explain what they're wearing. And so we are having a wonderful time. Let's come out of the other side of this more bold, happier, smarter, more confident too. If somebody comes to your door and they want you to give account for what you're doing or how you're living, you can just give them your constitution and your rules and set down your mandates for them, and invite them in and subject them to a Bible study or something else. Or just get out your homeschool history book from Abeck and start reading it to them about the French Revolution and how they shut down the churches and how they declared there was no God and there was no worship day, and that there weren't 7 days in a week, there were 8, or I don't know, 14, something like that. And they were just really, and it was just the government. I don't really believe that every single citizen was like that. I believe that the government did it, and the press too, because the media reports end up in our history books. So I would just suggest you have an alternate existence than what the world is doing. And the home is the best place to do it. We've been put in the best place. They actually, it's like Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox, and Brer Fox said, "Don't throw me into the briar patch," but that's where he liked to be. And so they sent us home, and they thought we would go crazy. But instead, let's thrive. Let's use our full, actually, since I've been in captivity since last July, my brain has become less foggy. It's like there have been some windshield wipers on my brain, and it's all erased, and I can think more clearly, and I can see more clearly. And I have been doing exercises from Fabulous 50s, which I don't care if you're 15 years old. Go to Fabulous 50s and do one of her 5-minute stretch exercises on YouTube. And if you're very young, go ahead and do that, because these are very sound exercises. And it also frees your mind up of depressive, negative thoughts. It just helps so much. And if you're having trouble with any kind of physical problem, aches, pains, just unable to get up and walk around, just go and try one of the sitting in a chair exercises, just 5 minutes. And I remember the first time I did one of those. After 5 minutes, I said, I'm never going to do that again. But it opened up in me a craving, and the next day I wanted to do it again. And it's like learning to eat kale or salads. I thought, I don't like this stuff, and so I won't eat it again. And I didn't want a salad, but the next day I started to crave that salad. And so that's how exercise is. And so let's come out of the other side triumphant, and let's thrive. Let's not just survive, okay? Instead of wearing a t-shirt that say I survived 2020 and 2021, get a t-shirt that says I thrived. And so this is what the Bible wants us to do. It says we are more than conquerors. I wonder what that's like to be more than a conqueror. You know, if a general in the ancient history conquered a country, how would he be more than a conqueror? Well, then he would go in and he would occupy the land and settle it and become rich off of it. So let's be more than conquerors, and especially at home, where you have total freedom. Just like I had freedom to change the atmosphere in here. You know what I miss? I miss going to the furniture stores. We had a few here that were where they arranged them, you know, by room, and they had beautiful bedrooms and living rooms, and they even had kitchens. And I miss going. It always gave me ideas. I'd take a little notepad with me before we had cell phones. Take a little notepad with me and get some ideas and go home. And then we would go out to lunch and just little things like that. But everything, I sat down and analyzed everything that I liked, that I miss, I can recreate in my home. Now, I wanted to take my family on a train trip. So for many years, I have been reading about the Royal Scotsman. I can't show you the picture, I didn't bring it, but it was in one of the very first Victoria magazines, and I have saved every magazine since their first issue in 1987. And one of their first years, I believe it was 88, they featured the Royal Scotsman and this train, and then they had recipes in it, and they had a picture of the dining table and tea time, and then they had all the recipes. So I have looked for all the recipes and all the menus, and I have learned something about trains. They had these luxury trains. They have off-train activities. There will be a stop. Everyone will get out, and they'll explore a historical building, or go and have tea and coffee somewhere, or go for a walking tour, maybe even some sports. You know, some people get out and play golf, and so we are going to do that. Our train is going to stop, and the passengers can go outside, and I have activities out there for them. We're going to have some foot races, and we're going to sit on the swing, and we'll also have an art class. We're going to go outside and paint in the fresh air, and these will be train stops. Then also I learned that some of the luxury trains had dramas and music and also lectures, and I thought I was quite fascinated with that. So I've been spending some time studying this and getting all the cabins ready to be like a train berth. I will have a rule that they have to stow their luggage and all their belongings under a chair or table. That will fix the problem of having things all over the place. And I'll have a little place for their laundry basket, a little laundry basket, and I'll invite them. Now, trains don't have laundry rooms, but this one does, because it's super luxury. So they can do their own laundry. And I'll have something for everyone from 3 to 23 and on up, because we have a 73, no, I believe he must be 70. He was born in 1942. How old does that make him, Mr. S? Is that 77? I don't know. goodness, I didn't know I had married such an old person. But he probably feels the same about me. So now let's go on to the itinerary that I'm going to have, and I hope that you are working and not just sitting here watching. There really isn't much to watch, but I've written some things down that go on in trains, in luxury trains. And one of the things that goes on is they have a time when there's a dining car, and they get to go to the dining car and participate in some of the wonderful gourmet food, and they pay a tremendous price for these things. They also provide a bathrobe and slippers for every passenger on these luxury trains where there's a limited amount of passengers. I haven't been able to do that yet, but I will. I have got my sewing out, and I'm sewing things for them to wear so that they can have something nice when we have a concert or dinner. And I believe that some of the grown-up children will probably play us some train music on their fiddles and banjos. So I've got that written down, and it's 3 days. I hope I can cram all this in to 3 days. And their breakfast will be brought to their cabins for one time. Other times they have to go to the dining car, and of course they have to bus their own tables. And so now I'll just go on from that, and it's going to be called the Royal, and one of the children has already printed up some tickets for me, admit one. And so instead of saying deplane, I'm going to say the train. And so let's go on now to homemaking. Okay, so hopefully you're dressed up and you've provided a mood for yourself. I like to dress up for you, but of course I won't be wearing this to do housework unless I get caught up picking up one thing and then I don't pay attention. But I do have an apron, so I'll show you a picture of this with an apron. I doubt I will be wearing it, but I am understanding more and more about the 1930s Depression and why people were seen in line wearing fancy clothes and suits and looking dressed up. I've been here for a year, and I've worn out a lot of my daily farm work clothes, and it's very easy to wear those out. And so now I'm digging further in my closet. I'm going to wear out some of these, because if I give them away to Goodwill, see, to me, Goodwill and some of these places are not very charitable, because they get this stuff for free, and then they make a big 100% profit off of it, and they sell it to people who maybe are poor and are looking for something a little cheaper, and their prices are not very, very cheap. And of course it does cost money for overhead and to run a business. But what I do when I'm finished with clothing and other things, if I'm decluttering my house and I want to get rid of some things, I just put it on a table by the side of the road. And that way people that really need it will come and pick it up, and it says free on it. And we have seen this being a trend around here on the farmlands, free tables. And I understand there is something on Facebook called Buy Nothing, and you leave a tub or a basket full of stuff on your porch, and people come and get what they want. And so this is also Buy Nothing, but I don't go through social media. If anyone is driving past, they get to have it if they want it. Now, housework does not need to be boring, and I taught my children when I was homeschooling them, and I'm homeschooling you, by the way. I taught my children when I was homeschooling them that boredom, let's discuss this thing about boredom. Mom, I'm bored, or, I didn't stay home because I thought housework was boring. Being bored simply indicates that you haven't fully developed or explored the possibilities of the ways to do things at home. There's probably an artistic aspect of everything, there's a scientific aspect of everything, and maybe a historic aspect to the things you do at home, to housekeeping and house cleaning and house maintaining. There might even be a literary aspect to it as you start putting art around, and also to explore the possibilities at home and to develop your abilities for your interests. there's more to homemaking. You shouldn't be home just cleaning it up and quickly making the bed and then, sighing all the time over it. But it should energize you because you're going to be putting in your talents and your abilities. And that's what I'm trying to show you here, and that's what I tried to show my children. Even the most mundane thing, like cleaning up after yourself in the bathroom, leaving that sink shiny and clean and dry, and putting out a clean towel or refolding the other one, making it look good. And I mentioned in several of my videos, but those of you who are new here may not have heard it, and that is, if a detective were to walk into your house, could he or she tell where you had been seated? Well, I can. Oh, I know so-and-so is here. Their socks are kicked off, and there's an empty glass sitting there, and there's a crumpled up napkin and a book and some other things, and so I know they have been there. Be almost fanatical or obsessed with cleaning up after yourself. Now, you who live alone, you will thrive from this, believe it or not. You may think no one's going to notice. You start cleaning up after yourself. The movement settles the little gray cells, as Poirot said. It settles your mind. It settles your racing thoughts. It settles you and takes away anxiety. So that's in my opinion. And by the way, everything you hear is just for your entertainment, and it's from one eccentric elderly woman. And so don't take it seriously if it doesn't fit into your life or fit into your home. I'm just going to cover myself right there. I'm not a physician. I'm not a mind reader, and I am I can study people sometimes and notice things, maybe habits that they have or things that they say that I will mention, but it doesn't mean that you need to take it seriously. So I'm just saying that. But if you go into your bathroom and you're cleaning up after yourself, there is a wonderful feeling of satisfaction, and it's like the exercises that I told you about, even the little chair exercises, the stretch exercises. It puts some kind of elixir into your personality or your mind, so that you don't desire to do destructive things to you. Like, for instance, I don't feel like going and eating ice cream or a bag of cookies or just eating all day after I've exercised. Then I want to go on to the next thing on my list, but my appetite's not for it in my mind, in the forefront of my mind all the time. And this is one way that you will change when you start being almost obsessed with cleaning up after yourself, putting things away. How many of you have changed clothes and just kind of laid something there, and pretty soon you have a pile there, and you've got to take all that pile back to your closet and hang it all up? How about taking those extra, because you just don't want to wear yourself out. Take those extra steps each time, even if it takes, put something away and you've been down that hall several times, go ahead and do it. And I'm saying this because it puts you in good habits. If you have children, they will notice this. They will notice how many times you walk away to put something away. And teach them as you go. Teach them as you live. But it's exercise. If you don't want to do those exercises, there's something about that movement, something about putting stuff away. Plus, now you know where it is. Now, I have been guilty of just taking something and mindlessly setting it down somewhere. My watch, my debit card that I use, my phone, just set it down because I'm busy and I'm thinking about 2 or 3 things at the same time. But if you learn to put things away and you say to yourself, even if there are people there, okay, this is where I put my pen. This is where I put my phone. Okay, I just now set my phone down here. There's nothing wrong with talking to yourself. People used to talk to themselves all the time, but it was to keep a voice going into their brain, and the voice activates the brain and also prevents this foggy thinking. So put things away, and you will find that you're more focused. Just become almost obsessed with it. I'll tell you a little bit more about our Thrive classes later on. So if you are bored at home, then start exploring the possibilities. start exploring what you can do as far as keeping it and how you can turn something into something else, and just use your knowledge. And you can also get new knowledge. You can also study more about it. I have suggested several books that you could use. I don't have them here, but there are so many aspects to the home, and I had it divided up one time, home life divided up into homemaking, tea time, hospitality, letter writing or correspondence, and feminine dress, and I think there was one more, I'm not sure what it was. I had it all divided up into those sections, so so that I could at least know that I had done one of those things every day. And I think the other one was art, music, and literature. I'll try to list that for you. And it's on the old, if you could ever find the archives of LAF, which was Jenny Chancey's site, and I had a column there called Lady Lydia Speaks, and it had those 5 things on there. I think I have downloaded it somewhere on a disc or something like that. So I am doing these videos so that you'll know who I am, and also so when you run across somebody who has said something really disparaging about me, that you'll come see me and you'll see who I am. And because you invariably will, and anybody who is doing something of any value is going to be targeted. And this is why, I lived in an era where if someone targeted you and lied about you or was angry at you, you were told you must have done something to set them off. You must have done something to offend them, or they must be having troubles at home, or maybe they have personal problems. But I think we're getting beyond that now and making them responsible for what they do. And just because someone is angry at you does not mean you did something. It could be that you become a target because you are doing something good, and people react very strongly to that. I saw that coming out in the 1980s when my children and I were home, and we were doing homeschooling, and I was doing the homemaking and stuff. There were some people that reacted to that. They didn't like it because I wasn't working. And in particular, I hate to say it, but some church members believed that if the woman wasn't out working, then she couldn't contribute her percentage to the church, and that the church was suffering and you were somehow being a freeloader or something. And so, I went through all this in the 1980s, and some of you women will remember that. But some of you who are new here, I hope to show you by what I have been through, how you can overcome it and how you can thrive over on the other side of all of this. And one of the reasons that I am not filled with the same level of fear as other people are regarding the I call it the political situation. It's really not a health situation. It's a created political situation. One of the reasons I don't have that same level of fear, I went through all of the same kind of stress when I was homeschooling my children, when I was trying to be a homemaker, even before the children came along. The stuff people would say, was just would just knock you over, especially if you weren't used to it. I grew up in the 1950s when most of the women were home, and women only worked if their husband had died and they had to. There was one woman whose husband had a heart attack, and he drove the school bus out in the country, and so she just kept driving the school bus. The bus had to keep going, so she just drove it. And but they only did it if their husband died, and most of the women were home. And so and there was another woman whose husband brought out the mail, brought out the packages and everything, and we had a home road from the homestead in Alaska, and the mailbox was down there on the end, and we had to walk down there to check the mail. But if there was a package that wouldn't fit, he would drive it up and then stop and visit and have a cup of coffee with my mother and dad. And so when the husband died, the wife took over driving the mail. And so I found that interesting. But women, of course, there weren't a lot of jobs that people could do. They were pretty limited, and a lot of them were very, very hard work, construction work, logging, working on the highways, working in the oil fields. I mean, literally working in the oil fields. My father would come home covered in this black oil. And so then to come into this era where if you chose to stay home, the insults were so terrible that sometimes it just knocked me over. I just couldn't hardly focus, and I would just like not be able to conduct myself and thrive at home. So when this thing came along, I thought, yeah, it's another one of those, you know, where they sell you the fear. So I'm not upset or fearful. So I'm here to tell you that you can thrive on the outside of this. But now let's go on to a few other interesting things here. So we talked about something that I thought you might be interested in, and that is in our Thrive class we had some young ladies there, and one of the things we wanted to do was educate them a little bit about hobbies and interests, because we tend to, especially in homeschooling, they take such delight in learning, but you have to be careful that you don't take an interest so far that it takes you into the world where it can actually destroy you. And so we talked about things like when we learn to sing, for example, but we don't want our sons and daughters out singing in public in places where it might put them in association with people who don't have their best interest at heart. We might, for instance, I liked to paint, and I have experience with this because often the teacher would say, you know, back in the olden days, well, you should submit your this painting to this gallery show that I'm going to be having with all my students. But there was a fee. You had to pay to have your painting displayed, and of course you always hoped you would win the grand prize, which would there would be money prizes, you know. And they would say, well, this is so good in the next painting, this is so good, why don't we go a step up and you display this in this other gallery? And of course the price was higher. And pretty soon you're in a world where you're paying and someone is profiting off of your hope that you're going to make something of yourself. Now that's just simplistic, you know, but it just gets, and it's the same with dance or anything that you're doing, not just dance, but let's say, well, I've known several other professions where you get into it, you start to learn, and they'll say, well, we need you to come to this little convention here and show your, you know, there's going to be people displaying all their talent, and so, but then you have to pay a fee. So we were just teaching these young people, be careful that it doesn't send you in the wrong direction. Now, for example, one of the things that we're doing is I'm going to put on a little play for the little ones, and it's going to be from an old McGuffey reader, which wasn't a play, but I showed them how to write the script, and it was about a boy and how he could overcome disappointment and how he could overcome his temper. And so we are making little props, and it was about a cat that wandered through and knocked the little boy's castle down that he was making out of blocks. And he was so distressed, and he threw a block at the cat, and so we're enjoying this, but we're trying to teach a lesson and make that available. We don't want them to take it so far that they enter the acting world, or that they decide they want to study drama for the rest of their lives. We want them to know a little bit about everything that they can use as tools in their home life with their families. For example, in the old cabins of North America, as they pushed west, the Scotch-Irish especially, they played fiddle in their cabins at night for their children, and everybody learned to play something. Everyone was very musical. But it wasn't for, and I'm sure they had their yearly jamborees, but we have to be careful in this day and age that we don't take something so far that we create a worldly mess of our lives. So that's about as best as I can describe that. You can always leave a comment and maybe explain it a little bit better. So your hobbies and interests, you have to ask the question, How will my pursuit of this influence someone, and what kind of company will I keep if I take it to the next level, if I take it so far? So just because you learn something, let's say you learn to play the piano, does not mean that you need to think of yourself as a great concert pianist. And because the trouble is, if you fail and that doesn't work for you, you can get a very low self-esteem. So we have to have self-worth in what we do at home. This is where it's at. This is the end. You know, you're going to end up at home anyway. Even if you do end up being a great singer or a great concert player, you're still going to end up at home when you're elderly like me. So beware of the talent world is what we were trying to say. Unless it is your own, you know, you can create your own. You can create your own societies and associations. You don't have to go with them, with those that are out there. I've been talking for about 35 minutes, and I had a few things I'd like to show you that we did in the Thrive class. So I want to explain what all we did on Saturday in the Thrive class on Zoom. Well, we recited Philippians 4:8 together. Now, it's pretty hard on these Zoom classes to talk at the same time. There's always a delay, or it cuts out if everybody talks at once, so we couldn't talk at once. So I think this next time we'll have them recite it or read it, each one separately. And then we had a what I'm wearing, and we went around to the different people on the screen and asked them to describe what they were wearing, why they liked it, and why they were wearing it. And some of them were saying that they were going to be digging some ditches later on. It's true. It's true. And needed to have more hardy clothing. And then we sang a song called Dear Lord and Father of Mankind. And the reason that I had that in there for this Thrive class was because it has a phrase in that, and it was take from our lives, takes from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. And I wanted a prayer song. We like to start our class out with prayer, but I found that there's a lot of prayer songs. We can all sing them together and say the same thing, and then no one's put on the spot. So then they had to read a paragraph that they wrote about a hobby or a like or an interest that they had, and how if it had any spiritual values. Name one spiritual value that it had, and one of them liked to cook or something like that, and how much joy that brought to her family, and how it fulfills God's command to be hospitable, and yet it was self-fulfilling too. It helped her learn, and as she felt good, it gave her esteem, it gave her a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment. This is so important. And as you come to Homemakers Radio, that's one thing that I'm trying to achieve, is that you can have some self-development without feeling that you're being totally self-focused, because the things you do are valuable for others, for the service of God and for others. And so one of them had a paragraph about how she played the fiddle, and she liked to play the fiddle because it soothed her and it calmed her, but she also said, it helps my little brother when he's fussy, or it makes other people happy to hear me play. And of course, she chooses tunes that glorify God, and she doesn't choose tunes that have a discordant note to it. So then we had a book review. Everyone brought a book that they wanted to show and tell about. And one of them brought a child's book and showed what beautiful art was in it, and I've forgotten who the author was. It was very nice. And it was interesting because it was a young mother who said she hadn't read a book in years, and her little 3-year-old said, "Oh, yes, you have. You've read this one," and handed her a book that she reads to him. And so she just reviewed that book. So then another lady had a gardening book from the Victorian times that told about how this book was written. Was this old house, the gardens were being restored, and they didn't know what was there or how it was done, and they found the receipts in a journal of plants and other things that they had bought to make this garden, and also it had a little diary which showed where things were planted, and we found that very interesting. As a matter of fact, I knew a woman who built a modern Victorian house. She really did. She and her husband both, hands-on built this house, and she ordered wallpaper from England, and she saved all the paint chips, and she put them all in a book, and then she wrote down where she got the carpet, the wood, the paint, and all the sources and stuff, and I guess left the book in the house. Well, someone bought the house and then just totally wrecked it by painting rooms royal blue and black, and then someone else bought it and knew that there was probably something more to this house and found that book and was able to restore it back and order some of the things that were in it. So this was an interesting book this lady brought and gave us some good ideas. And then one of the girls, who is 14, brought a book about how to make a gift basket, and it was called Perfect Gift Baskets. And so that was, how you stuff it first and how you layer it and what you put into it. That was good. And then another girl brought a devotional book that every day there was a scripture in there to read and to discuss. And so then we had a hair lesson by the hairdresser that comes, which absolute delight. In fact, I wish she would do YouTube videos, because she'll never repeat what she did this last time. And she showed several historical hairstyles using her daughter as a model, and her daughter looked like a perfect Victorian after she did some of these hairstyles. And she told us the dangers of using certain types of clips and pins and rubber bands on your hair, what was good and what wasn't, and how to treat your hair, and just different aspects of it. And then we had a coat lesson where I went to a little private modeling school back in the olden days, not because I wanted to be a model, but because they had so many things in their curriculum that I thought might help me as a preacher's wife. They had introductions, they had, how to be a good hostess at a get-together, and how to dress for certain occasions, and then they had how to shake hands and how to stand up straight, and also how to, sit and walk properly, and how to. So I ran across my old notes, and this was a Christian woman who had been to a modeling school and actually had been a model, but decided she would put it in a Christian perspective to help people. So she had put she developed this little school, and I went to it, and so I taught the coat lesson. And sometime I will do this for you here, and how to put a coat on, how to take it off, how to put it on if someone else is helping you, and just the different aspects of wearing a coat. And so then I encouraged everyone to watch their email for the next assignment, and they'll be all bringing back their assignments. And one of the ladies, they all had to read the paragraph I told you about, what they like to do and how they have put spiritual values in it. So one of the ladies was so gracious to us, and she read Galatians 5:22-28, Philippians 4:8-9, and 1 Peter 1:5-8. Those are all those lists that I like, and I will read them to you before I go today, on how she had to put her hobby against the standards in those scriptures, so that she wouldn't be just collecting things and enjoying things just because it's more heaping up of things. And in this case, it was the rubber stamps and the acrylic stamps, and of course we want them all. Those of us that like them want them all, not necessarily that we will do anything with them, but we just like having them. And so how to make sure that you balance that and don't overspend, or you have to be careful about the cost of it and what other things are more important, and how to keep it from dominating your life, at the same time helping you in your self-development and using it as a teaching tool if you can. And also how you can develop your talents, that's okay, but don't carry it to such an extreme. And we're teaching this because we have seen a lot of people just be shipwrecked by something that they got interested in. We want to be careful with that, how to keep it in perspective. So today I also wanted to show you a couple of things from the olden days, is that I've been going through these old Victoria magazines. This is from 1991. Now at the back of one of these magazines, back from about 1987 to 1993 maybe, there were house plans in the back. And they showed a colored picture, and then down at the bottom there were the layouts of the rooms, the house plan of the room on the inside, so that you could see the floor layout and where everything was. And what we found, the girls especially liked to look at this part here. The boys liked the outside structure of the house. The girls were looking at the pathways to see how far the kitchen was from somewhere, from the dining room, or where the important part, where they had placed the bathrooms. And I don't like a bathroom right next to the dining room or the kitchen, and I don't like the laundry room right next to the kitchen. I'd like to have the laundry room further back by the bedrooms where you take the clothes off. And but they pored over these every time they came, and so their dad brought them home a package of graph paper, and they learned to draw these rooms. Now, this is not to say we are discontent or that we, but the point is, even if you never get the kind of ideal home you want, you know what it should be like, and you know what you want, and you know what it would be like. And so this brought hours of contentment to do this and to understand about how a home works and what things matter in a home. Now, of course, there were those who said they didn't even think about stuff like that, and they didn't care. That's fine. But this is like interest for me. This was like gaining interest on an investment, as I would have some things around that might not interest some of them, but would interest other of them. So that led to, I don't know where we found this, but it might have been in a homeschool catalog. It's called Good Old Houses. And on the side of it was 8 houses. There were 8 houses, and on the inside there was a paper that tells you what the style was called. And the paper also said that every house might not have all those elements on them, but they might have a door, or there might be a roof of that kind. And so I wanted to show you some of this and show you what the inside of it looked like, and it was a puzzle. So the puzzle pieces were just the same. They were all the same. And you put these houses together, and you would learn what doors went to the Federalist style, and what doors went to the Gothic Revival style, and what doors went to the Queen Anne style. And then there was a paper on the inside with all these on here. And I encouraged my grandkids to take theirs. By the way, you can get this brand new, wrapped in cellophane. In fact, you have to take the puzzle pieces apart. They're still kind of hooked together. You can still get this because I ordered 2 new copies. My children got such great joy out of it, and I encourage my grandchildren to color this to go with these houses on the side so that they could identify them by color. Take their crayons and color those according to what it was colored there. So there's the Federal style, the Greek Revival, Gothic Revival, the Italian Ate or the Italianate, Second Empire, Queen Anne, Shingle style, and Bungalow, and it was from the 1775 to 1930. And so they grew up with appreciation for doors. And in fact, I remember my daughter saying one time when she had seen a real pretty door, I don't know where we saw it, but she says, "That's what I call a door. Now that's a real door." I was just so tickled to hear her say that. And so I'm going to show you the inside of this box and what one of these puzzle pieces are. And like they said in the instructions, now we never played the game. We just let them take it apart, put it back together again, and read about it. And this one is, I believe this one might be the Bungalow. I'm not sure what it is. I'll open this again and see. Bear with me. But you This one is Greek Revival. It's interesting. But it was made in, remember I told you about some of the architects of the 1800s that after the Civil War they had nowhere to go and there was no jobs for them, so they developed their own company. And was it Andrew Jackson Downing and somebody else went together, and I have the book that they wrote, and they took these styles and they made little houses for people, so that and they designed these houses so that every family in the United States could have a house and a place for a garden and a fruit tree and a swing for a child, and maybe even have some chickens. And so they made them smaller, so this was the Greek Revival one, and you'll see these around. But what this did for my children was, we would often be in the car, as many homeschoolers are, and go past a neighborhood or past something in town, and they would say, oh, that's the Greek Revival, Queen Anne. And we often would drive down the older neighborhoods, and we found out that in some towns, in most towns that have a history, or old towns, the further back you get away from the city center or the town center, there's your Victorian homes. Then you move a little bit further up and you get to your 1940s homes, and then you get to your 1930s homes, or your 1950s, and then 40s and 30s, and then closer to the city center you might see, or it might be just the opposite. Close to the city center you might see the older homes. And so we just delighted in going for walks and looking at these houses. And then even the modern houses will have elements of these styles. Now what this did for my children is showed them some things about life that they could have their mind on. And not all life is about social success, but knowing something like this was very helpful, because one of my children became a general contractor and a construction worker and a builder, and the other one, she designed her house and had it built. Her and her husband built it, and so with all this knowledge, now her husband went to architectural college, and they found out that she actually knew more than he did just by studying things like this and the backs of these magazines. She knew the names of things and so it does, and it also helps you if you end up in a place like the manse, like I am in, and if you end up in captivity, the many things you can do to add architectural interest to a plain house like this house, just a box, I mean, it's like a train. It's just this long ranch style house, and it's long. And all the things that you can do, as you notice, I have added architectural interest here. I've added those shelves at the top of the windows, and I've added the little wrought iron things on the walls, and there's a door I picked up that's in the corner over there. And so now I wanted to tell you one more thing before I let you go. I think I have covered just about everything here, but I want you all to make something nice for yourself or for your home, or if you can't make anything, at least arrange something nice, something that gives you some visual delight in your home that's pretty. And I'm not one to have fresh flowers in my house, because I have so many flowers growing outside around the house. We're on farm country. We have no lack of foliage, and so I don't bring fresh flowers into my house. For one thing, I don't need one more thing to do, and when those die, I've got to empty it, wash out the vase, and throw everything out. So I don't bring the fresh flowers in the house. And I've also found out that there's so many people that have allergies that if they come into my house and I've got something blooming in there, they sneeze a lot. So I don't. But whatever suits you, do that, and that be your assignment today. And I also wanted to tell you about the new Victoria magazines. This is the latest one, and then they're the ones that publish Tea Time also. If you can get yourself a subscription to that, this coming every month is such a delight, and it's a bright spot in your mailbox. But there's never a discouraging word in it. It's pretty clean. You just go through it and see. They're careful a lot more. They're actually better than the ones from the 1980s because they're very careful with their advertising, and they weren't so careful with the first ones were done by a New York publisher. These are done by an Alabama publisher. They're a lot more careful with their advertisements, and they just advertise their own magazines, advertise their own stuff in here. And so anyway, one of the things that, this is a good art subject. There, that's a beautiful scene. I might use that if I had children here at home, or maybe on my Thrive class. Now I have subscribed to this for my descendants, and I might say, well, let's try to draw that. And then the other thing is, have you ever sat down and just looked through one of these and then decided you were going to follow a menu that's back here? They often put a menu back here. And one of the things that I like about it for young girls, especially young girls who seem to be wanting more direction or more feeling of more worth, one of the things that I like about it is, looky here. They show this wonderful photograph of this woman who's preparing these deliciously fresh gourmet vegetables, and that is an image we want our young women to see and to enjoy and to feel that they have, and to know that they have worth, and especially if they get interested in actually growing this stuff. And also, well, there are just a lot of interesting things here that, every now and then they will put somebody in there that's wearing a fairly nice dress, and, do a house arrangement. And they also they go to different places around the world and show castles too, but they also show very down-home type things. And every year they go to some historical place. So you might consider subscribing to this. At least subscribe one time and see how you feel about it. But they seem to come at the right time. You get a real gloomy day, and then you open your mailbox, and there's that bright spot there. Okay, now I read Exodus to you a couple of videos ago, and I have not said why you should read this, but I will tell you why. I read some things out of Genesis, and I could probably spend a year creating a curriculum out of Genesis, but I'm not going to. So I went over to Exodus, and one of the reasons you should read Genesis and Exodus is not trying to figure it out, or even, there are some things that are a bit strange that you might not understand, but know what is in it. That will help you, because people have some wacky ideas, and they'll say, if you ever watched The End of the Sixth Happiness with Ingrid Bergman, remember she went to China and she decided to have an inn, and she wanted someone to tell Bible stories to people at night, and so she had a helper, and he listened to her for a while. He got so mixed up. He had Moses and Abraham and Noah all visiting together at the same time, and anyway, this tells you the chronological order in which things began and who came next. And so we have Exodus now, and I explained how the Joseph, who went and helped the Pharaoh gather grain because there was going to be a great famine, and how he saved the people of Egypt and saved his own family, and how they all came to live there and were given a piece of land to live on. And yet a Pharaoh came that did not know Joseph, because it was generations later, and decided to put hardship on the people because he was afraid that they would be so strong that if the enemy came, they would take the enemy's side. This is how he reasoned. And so I got to thinking about that, and I did read that to you last time, but I might go ahead and read it again just to refresh your mind. I was watching someone's video online, and he was saying that no hero was ever a hero because he dominated people, but because he was brave. We always admire brave people, but not that he was controlling or dominating, but he was brave. Well, this Pharaoh And if you're controlling or dominating, it's because you fear uh, the strength that these people would have. So there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh some store cities, Pithom and Ramses, but the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and the more they spread abroad. And that's what I think, that you as a homemaker and being home, many people are home, not used to being a homemaker. I see that the light is coming. I tried to get here early enough that there would be no backlight. But you're not supposed to be watching anyway, just listen. And this is what I'm hoping, a lot of us come over on the other side stronger and healthier and with minds able to cope with things better. And being like the pioneers who suffered terrible losses but came over here and still built and developed the land. And the Egyptians were, but the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. So the more they oppress us with this political thing, the more we will thrive, the more we will learn, the more we will study, the more we will become orderly, and the more alert we will be, the more ready we will be to talk to people. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel, so they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service, in mortar and brick, and in all kinds of work in the field. In all their work they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Now it was brought out later on when they were given their freedom and left, that they missed the food that came to their door. So they were happy slaves because they had things provided for them. Some of them were happy. Because they did complain that they missed all the things that the foods, the cucumbers, the melons, the things that were brought to them. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah and the other Puah, when you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live. Now you might find this rather horrifying, but what is going on today with abortion, is it any less horrifying? The other thing that I wanted to say about this is sometimes a happy slave is a very dangerous thing because they don't realize that they're slaves, because they're living off of the government, or they're getting a lot of perks and things that they think they can't get if they're not in subjection to this. So, but the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives to account and said to them, Why have you done this, and let the male children live? And the midwives said to Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife even comes to them. So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, Every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. Now, we know this verse, that God gave them homes. God gave them houses, some versions say, but the Greek says families. That's interesting, isn't it? So this is quite a shocking report here. You don't hear very many people objecting to all this and protesting about this, but this is a story, and I will continue it later. I have been talking long enough, and I hope to see you. I always want to come here more often, but there's so much to do now, and I told you ladies, Get your house in order. Get organized. Know where everything is. The best way to reduce anxiety is to go through a drawer, a bookshelf, your clothing department in your house, sort it, know what it is, where it is, get everything in order. You never know how God's going to use you, especially you older women, if God's going to call you to, if you're going to be asked by someone to come in, on Zoom or anywhere and help or provide some kind of lesson for somebody or in some way be an influence. So just be prepared and be ready. And the best way to be ready is get your house, I mean literally, in order. So ladies, I hope I've given you something to think about, and I hope you got quite a bit done today. I always like hearing from you. If you'd like to leave a comment, I don't have comments on the channel, but if you will go and click the link that I provide in the description box, you can go over to the post where I put this and where I show other pictures, and I'll show you things about what I've been talking about, pictures of the book and the puzzle and places that you can get things. I wish I had spoken a lot more about some other things, but I will be back, and I hope sooner rather than later. And I appreciate your gracious support to me, and because of some of your generous contributions, I've been able to subscribe to things like this that really help me and give me some material too. And so I hope you have a lovely day. God bless you. Thank you very much for coming. I'm honored that you would choose this to listen as you go, as you work. And I'll see you next time. Bye.